Snow over Golf Road did not fall so much as decide to stay. It lay in hard white sheets across the employee lot of Hale Flagship Motors, a glass and steel cathedral of automotive desire where a Bentley could be configured in 47 exterior colors and a man's worth could still be measured, in certain rooms, by the quiet of a V8 at idle. Inside the showroom, heat poured from vents hidden in marble. Outside, the wind came off the expressway and found every gap in a thrift store coat. From the road, the dealership looked like prosperity arranged at an angle. Silver rows, flags snapping, a reader board promising 0.9% on select models for the extraordinarily qualified. The phrase extraordinarily qualified was doing a lot of quiet violence in the suburbs that winter. Most people who kept the place running, the ones who washed, wiped, bolted, drove shuttle, answered phones with a smile that cost more than it paid, were ordinarily qualified for exhaustion and extraordinarily exposed to anyone who owned both their schedule and their note. Victor Hale stood at the glass wall of his second-floor office with a tumbler of water he would not drink, watching a white tow truck back toward a dull gray Corolla parked in Space 19B. He was 53, founder and chief executive of Hale Motors Group, a privately held constellation of 22 luxury and performance dealerships across the Midwest, plus Hale Financial Services, the captive lending arm that made the dream purchasable for people whose credit scores lived in the weather. The group's last private valuation sat at $2.4 billion. Victor's name was etched into the cornerstone near the service drive in letters deep enough to hold snow. His house in Winnetka had a heated garage for 4, a wine fridge that knew more about his evenings than his ex-wife did, and a driveway so clean it looked ashamed of weather. His daughter, Paige, was 20 and studying environmental design in Ann Arbor. She texted him photos of bike lanes and captions that felt like accusa tie-ins. His son, Cole, traded tech stocks from a condo Victor had co-signed and called twice a month to ask about liquidity events, never about lunch. Victor told himself this was modern family. Modern family, he was learning, was often just logistics with shared DNA. He lived by numbers that sounded like morals when said aloud in conference rooms. Capture rate, F&I PVR, delinquency buckets, recovery timeline, days to remarket. Cars were inventory. Buyers were paper. Employees were capacity. If capacity cost too much, you trimmed it. If paper went late, you recovered the asset. The language was so clean it could wash blood off a ledger. He did not think of himself as a man who watched suffering for sport. He thought of himself as a man who watched systems work. Collections was a system. Delinquency was a signal. Repossession was the consequence that kept the signal honest. On the credenza behind him sat a crystal award from a captive finance association. Excellence in responsible lending. Victor had smiled for the photo. He had not asked who defined responsible. Awards, he knew, were often applause for a story the industry told itself before bed. Then the Corolla's driver's side door opened, and a woman in a Navy detailer's uniform stepped out into the cold with her hands raised. Not in surrender exactly, more in the exhausted grammar of someone who had already lost the argument before it began. Behind her, from the rear seat, an 8-year-old boy climbed down holding a backpack. A smaller girl followed, one glove missing, a stuffed rabbit clenched under her arm. Victor's hand tightened on the glass. He knew the woman's face the way executives know faces. From hallways, from the edge of celebrations, from the blur of people who made the product shine. Carmen Ruiz, lead night detailer. 3 years on the flagship floor. The one the sales managers requested when a client wanted the car to look like money had been invented that morning. He did not know her children's names. He did know, with a sudden nausea, aiding clarity, that the tow truck's door bore a magnetic sign. Hale Financial Recovery Unit. Carmen Ruiz had woken at 4:10 a.m. to the sound of the radiator knocking like a guilty conscience. Her apartment in Mount Prospect was warm only in the kitchen. Diego, 8, slept in a twin bed with a blanket that had been washed so many times it felt like memory. Luna, 4, slept sideways as if even sleep required negotiation. Carmen packed lunches that were more hope than nutrition. Peanut butter, apple slices, a granola bar on sale. She checked the envelope in her purse where she kept the ER paperwork from 11 days earlier. Diego's wheeze, the inhaler, the 4-hour wait, the bill that arrived before the pharmacy discount did. The ER nurse had been kind. Kindness did not reduce the balance. Kindness was a tone. Balances were policy. She had called Hale Financial 7 times. On the first call, hold music played a tinny version of a song about freedom. On the third call, a representative named Chris told her the portal offered hardship options. On the fourth call, a different voice told her the hardship queue was closed for accounts already in late-stage collections. On the fifth, a woman asked if Carmen could pay 50% today by debit. Carmen stared at her bank app. $61.42. On the seventh call, she was placed on hold so long her prepaid minutes died in her hand, mid-sentence, as if the company had found a way to hang up without hanging up. Her payment was 11 days late. The loan was for $214 a month on a 2014 Corolla with 128,000 miles, financed through Hale Financial at 19.9% because her credit had been bruised by a divorce she did not choose. Her ex, Luis, had left for Florida with a girlfriend and a promise to send something when the season picks up. Season for Luis never picked up. Carmen had stopped waiting for whether that belonged to other men. The car was not a dream. It was a bridge between the dealership and the apartment and the school and the clinic. It smelled faintly of detailer chemicals and children's crackers. The check engine light had been on for a month. A small orange anxiety she could not afford to investigate. Without it, the bridge collapsed. Before work, she wiped Luna's nose, checked Diego's backpack for the inhaler spacer, and practiced the sentence she might need if a manager asked why the kids were there. After school closed. Sister delayed. Emergency. 2 hours. She hated that her motherhood required a defense exhibit. She had brought the kids to work because the after-school program was closed for a staff training day and her sister's shift at the airport had been extended. The break room had a microwave and a cartoon channel with the sound low. It was against policy. Policy, Carmen had learned, was written by people with spouses and spare bedrooms. In the detailing bay, the air smelled of leather conditioner and cold metal. She liked the work in the way people like competence. The transformation from fingerprint to mirror, the proof that care still changed surfaces. Salesmen walked past without learning her name and sold artisan craftsmanship to men who would never meet the artisan. She was mid-polish on a Bentley's rear quarter panel when Jorge from security knocked on the detailing bay door. Carmen. Outside. Now. She knew before she saw the truck. The body knows certain disasters by temperature. A sudden drop, a stillness in the chest, the childish hope that if you do not turn around, the world will revise itself. Victor did not take the elevator. He took the stairs, coat forgotten, dress shoes slipping once on melted snow tracked into the stairwell. A salesman on the landing started to greet him and stopped when he saw Victor's face. By the time he reached the lot, the tow operator had already hooked the Corolla's front end. The winch made a sound like a small animal being convinced against its will. Carmen stood between the truck and her children like a human fuse. Other employees pretended not to watch from the service doorway. Pretending not to. A watch was the official sport of workplaces where everyone understood the danger of becoming next. This is a mistake, Carmen was saying, voice low and furious, the kind of anger that had to stay quiet because children were listening. I work here. I talk to your office. I have the ER papers. Ma'am, the account is flagged for recovery, the operator said, not unkindly, reading from a tablet. Hale Financial. Order number HF 44119. If you have personal items, you have 5 minutes. 5 minutes. Victor had spent longer than that choosing cufflinks for a charity gala about youth opportunity. Diego looked up at Victor without knowing who he was. Are you going to help my mom? The question landed harder than any investor memo Victor had signed that year. In Diego's eyes, there was no brand hierarchy, no captive finance award, no excellence plaque. There was only the ancient child math of power. Tall man, truck, mother. Choose. Carmen turned, recognized him, and the fury in her face changed shape, not softer, sharper, as if the true defendant had finally arrived in court. Mr. Hale, she said, tell them to stop. Victor looked at the tablet in the operator's hand, at the Hale Financial logo, at the children's car seats still strapped inside a car that was rising, inch by inch, off the asphalt of his own lot. A crayon drawing was stuck in the rear window, a blue square with wheels and a smiling stick family. The smile was the most expensive thing in the lot. Unhook it, Victor said. The operator blinked. Sir, I need authorization from. I am authorization, Victor said. Unhook it. Now. For a second the operator hesitated, caught between App and King. Then the winch reversed. The Corolla settled back down with a sound like a held breath released. Snow slid off the hood in a small avalanche. Luna clapped once, uncertain whether joy was allowed. Carmen did not thank him. She gathered Luna against her hip, steered Diego toward the service entrance, and said only, "If you put that hook on my car, Aga, and while my kids are watching, you can detail your own Bentleys." Then she walked inside with a dignity that made the glass showroom look suddenly cheap. Jorge from security muttered, "Never seen that cancel." And Victor heard in it both awe and a warning. Exceptions become stories, and stories travel faster than memos. The Bentley client arrived at 5:04 p.m. in a cashmere coat and the calm of a man who had never waited for a bus in February. His name was Ellis Crow, private equity, the kind of buyer who requested ceramic coating and then never looked at the person who applied it. Carmen finished the rear quarter with hands that still remembered the winch. She sprayed, wiped, inspected under LED light like a surgeon closing. Crow circled the car, nodded, and said to the salesman, "This is why I come here. Standards." He did not look at Carmen. The salesman did not introduce her. Victor, watching from the mezzanine, felt the sentence standards rearrange itself into indictment. Standards for whom? Shine for whom? Which lives were allowed to be unfinished so the paint could be perfect? After delivery, champagne foamed in the customer lounge. Victor declined the glass and walked back to detailing, where Carmen was emptying her bucket. "You could have told him who made it look like that," Victor said. Carmen snorted. "And then what? He tips me 20 and feels holy? I don't need his holy. I need my Corolla on the ground and my hours back." "You'll have both," Victor said. "I'll believe the second when I see the memo," she said, and punched out. Victor Hale had been raised on asphalt. His father, Raymond Hale, started with a used lot on Western Avenue in the late 70s. Plastic flags, a trailer office, and a theology of close rates. Raymond taught Victor that every car on a lot was a story someone wanted to believe about themselves. The job was not to sell metal. The job was to finance belief long enough for the payment to clear. "Never fall in love with the buyer," Raymond said once, wiping grease from his hands with a shop rag. "Fall in love with the contract. The buyer leaves. The contract stays." There had been a Saturday in 1988 when Victor was 15 and a woman cried in the trailer because her Nova was being hooked for 2 missed payments after her husband left. Raymond let her take the car seats out and then nodded to the driver. That night Raymond told Victor, "If you start making exceptions for tears, tears become strategy." Victor had nodded. He became excellent at nodding. Victor had built an empire on that line. Luxury Marquez, climate-controlled showrooms, champagne at deliveries, and underneath, like a second chassis, Hale Financial, the engine that turned aspiration into receivable. He told himself the high APRs were risk-priced. He told himself late fees were behavioral nudges. He told himself repossession was rare, regrettable, and necessary like amputation. He had never watched amputation happen in his employee lot with a stuffed rabbit present. After Carmen walked inside, Victor stood in the cold until his ears burned. The tow operator waited, uncertain, tablet dangling. A gust threw grit across the Bentley delivery ramp. Somewhere on the expressway a horn argued with another horn. The city's perpetual negotiation. "Log it as executive cancel," Victor said. "If your dispatcher has a problem, give them my cell." "Yes, Mr. Hale." The operator hesitated. "For what it's worth, I hate the kid jobs. Nobody tells you in training how quiet an 8-year-old gets." "Then bill me for the cancel and go home," Victor said. "And tell dispatch. No more employee lot recoveries without a human name on the order that isn't an algorithm." Victor looked at Space 19B. Meltwater already filled the tread marks. In 20 minutes, the lot would look innocent again. That, he realized, was how his industry preferred harm. Reversible to the eye, permanent to the person. He texted his assistant one line. "Clear my afternoon. Find every employee account in recovery status. No meetings about brand warmth." Then he put the phone away and breathed air that tasted like exhaust and snowmelt until he could walk back inside without looking like a man fleeing his own reflection. In the break room, Carmen sat Diego and Luna at the SCARD table and gave them juice boxes from the vending machine with hands that only shook after the children looked away. Someone had taped a faded OSHA poster beside a takeout menu. The microwave clock blinked 12 o'clock forever, a small monument to things no one with authority bothered to reset. Victor stood in the doorway, a billionaire in a doorway designed for people who ate microwaved leftovers at 9 p.m. "I need 10 minutes, he said. "I need my shift," Carmen answered. "The Bentley is half done. Your client arrives at 5. "The Bentley can wait." "Easy to say when you've never been written up for a delayed delivery," she said. Then, seeing Diego listening, she softened her volume. Not her point. "Talk." Victor sat. The chair squeaked in a language his office chairs had forgotten. Carmen laid the ER papers on the table. Diego's name, date, diagnosis, acute asthma exacerbation. Amount due after insurance, $640. Pharmacy inhaler, $78 with coupon. She had paid the pharmacy. She had paid half the ER bill. She had missed the car payment by 11 days because the other half of the ER bill and a rent increase arrived in the same week her overtime was cut. Diego, pretending not to listen, whispered to Luna, "If they take the car, how do we get to school?" "We walk," Luna said, with 4-year-old confidence unruined by mileage. Carmen's jaw flexed. "We don't walk on Golf Road in February, baby. That's why Mama is talking." "Overtime cut?" Victor asked. Carmen laughed once, dry. "January efficiency memo. Detail hours capped to protect margin on the service side." Same month Hale Financial ran the Super Bowl spot about driving dreams home. Cute. My neighbor texted me the ad while I was calculating which bill could be late without killing us. I almost threw the phone. Victor felt the efficiency memo in his body like a stone. He had signed it. He had praised the COO for labor discipline on an earnings prep call. He remembered the phrase he used, "We trim fat so the brand stays sharp." He had not asked whose dinner was the fat. "I called your finance line 7 times, Carmen said. "No hardship, no pause, just portal, portal, portal. Then a truck. In front of my kids. On your asphalt." She leaned forward. "Do you know what it's like to detail a car worth more than your apartment building, while your own car is being treated like stolen property? Do you know how quiet a child gets when they realize adults cannot stop a machine?" Victor did not answer because any answer would have been a performance. Luna held up the rabbit. "His name is Bin. He doesn't like tow trucks." "Neither do I," Victor said, surprising himself. Carmen studied him. "You stopped it because they were watching. What happens tomorrow when they're at school and the truck comes back cleaner, quieter, without an audience?" "It won't," Victor said. "Then put it in writing," Carmen said. "My life does not run on billionaire moods." He pulled Carmen's file himself. Not through an assistant. Through the dealer management system and the Hale Financial Servicing portal, passwords he rarely used because distance had become a management philosophy. The password reset alone took 12 minutes. 12 minutes was longer than the recovery algorithm had spent deciding to lift her life. Carmen Ruiz. Hired 2023. Attendance excellent. Customer compliment cards. 14. One write-up for bringing children on site during an emergency, later marked informal counseling. Pay. $19.50 an hour. Overtime. Previously 8 12-hours weekly. After January memo, near zero. Year-to-date earnings trajectory. Down 18% while flagship F&I profit was up 11. Car loan. Originated at Hale Financial Desk during her second month, when a sales manager told her the employee rate was a benefit. APR, 19.9. Employee rate, it turned out, was a phrase that mean, "T available, not kind." The original deal jacket had a sticky note in a salesman's hand. Needs reliable transport for nights, easy captive. Easy captive. They had named her vulnerability a feature. Late fee schedule, $45 on day 5. Another $45 on day 10, then repossession eligibility. Her 11-day miss had generated $90 in fees and an automated recovery order. Call log. 7 inbound attempts, 6 marked portal directed, 1 marked abandoned/caller disconnect. Abandoned, as if Carmen had quit on her own life rather than run out of minutes. The system had not flagged her as an employee of Hale Motors. The databases did not speak. 1 company in public. 2 machines in practice. Victor sat back and understood, with the cold clarity of a man reading his own autopsy, that the non-communication was not a glitch. Integration would have created duties. Duties would have created cost. Cost would have created a slide titled risk. So the machines stayed strangers while the brand smiled as family. Victor printed the recovery order and the efficiency memo and set them side by side on his desk like evidence in a trial where he was both prosecutor and defendant. He also printed the Super Bowl script. Driving dreams home. In the margin he wrote, "Who's home? Whose dream? Who gets towed in the driveway?" His COO, Dane Whitaker, arrived within 20 minutes of being summoned. Cologne sharp, smile ready. Dane was 47, golf fit, fluent in the dialect of board decks. He had once joked that empathy was a line item best left to marketing. "Vic, if this is about the Ruiz recovery, collections followed policy. Employee lots aren't sanctuaries. If we start carving exceptions because someone cries in the snow, every late account grows a tear." Victor slid the 2 documents across the table. "She polishes the cars that pay your bonus," Victor said. "We cut her overtime, then charged her fees for falling behind on a loan we sold her, then sent a truck to the place she earns the money to pay us. Explain the part where th is risk management and not a closed loop of extraction." Dane's smile held. "It's a separate P&L, auto retail and captive finance. You designed it that way for capital efficiency. Warehouses like clean walls between originations and retail HR. If we soft-touch employee accounts, we create contagion. Next it's cousins, then sob stories. Then the book yields like a charity raffle. Pull every recovery against active Hale employees in 18 months, Victor said. With schedule histories. That will take. Then start now." An analyst delivered the file by evening. 41 recoveries or initiations. 29 with overtime or hour reductions in the prior 60 days. 19 with at least one unanswered hardship call logged as portal directed. In the notes field of Carmen's account, a suggested comment auto-filled after the order. Asset prioritized for rapid remarket. Estimated fee plus auction uplift favorable versus cure. Favorable. Victor highlighted the word until the page tore. "You designed it." There it was again. The family curse of competent men. They built machines so complete that blame could always be outsourced to the blueprint. "Dane," Victor said quietly, "if you send another truck onto an employee lot without my signature, you're done. Not reassigned. Done." Dane's smile finally cracked. "You're letting one detailer rewrite group policy." "I'm letting one detailer reveal group policy," Victor said. "There's a difference." That night Victor did not go home to his Winnetka house with the heated garage and the 3 cars that never worried about hooks. He sat in the flagship service bay after close with the lights half dim and called every number Carmen had called, using a burner app on his phone like a man conducting industrial espionage against his own company. He got the same maze. Portal prompts, recorded cheer, a hardship option that dead-ended for accounts with recovery flags. On one call, when he pretended to be a warehouse worker with a sick child, the agent said sympathetical, "LY, I understand, sir." And then, without transition, "The system won't let me place a hold once recovery is queued. Have a blessed day. Have a blessed day." The system was designed to make human pause expensive and automated punishment cheap. He opened Raymond's old notebook, kept in a locked drawer like scripture. Between close rate tables were maxims in block print. One read, "A late buyer is testing your spine." Another, "Tears are not tender. Tears are leverage." Victor wrote beneath them in a different ink. "Sometimes tears are oxygen. Sometimes the spine you protect is the one crushing your own people." At 11:40 p.m. he walked the lot. Space 19B was empty now. Carmen had driven home after shift with a temporary hold Victor placed on the account by executive override. The snow had covered the tow tracks. Erasure, he thought, was the luxury side of harm. Paige texted from Ann Arbor. Saw a story about hospital workers sleeping in cars. "Your industry any better?" Victor stared at the message for a long time. Then he typed, "Not today. Working on it." Paige replied, "Working on it is what people say before they do nothing." He did not argue. He set an alarm for 5 a.m. and slept in his office chair like a man who had finally been demoted to the truth. Carmen did not trust the hold. Trust, for her, was a payment that cleared and a morning that did not begin with fear. She agreed to meet Victor at a diner on Bussy Road on her day off, kids in a booth with crayons, because Pastor Ellis from the storefront church had offered to sit 2 tables away as witness. Pastor Ellis drank tea and read a newspaper he did not care about, eyes on the room the way good shepherds watched wolves and weather. The diner smelled of onions and coffee burned into philosophy. A waitress named Dot called everyone Han, and meant it as infrastructure, not intimacy. "I don't want a viral apology," Carmen said before coffee arrived. "I don't want a free car for cameras. I want the late fees gone, the APR cut to what you give your golf F. Riens, my overtime restored or my base raised to cover the cut, and a rule that Hale Financial cannot repo an active Hale Motors employee without a human review that includes punch records and medical docs. Put it in writing for everyone, not just me." Victor nodded. "Done." "Say it slower," Carmen said. "Men like you say done like a remote start." So he said it again, point by point, while Diego colored a tow truck red and then crossed it out. "Also," Carmen added, "Luna's car seat was in that Corolla when they lifted it. If that hook had gone higher, we'd be having a different conversation. Your recovery unit treats cars like boxes. There were children in that box." Victor looked at Luna's missing glove hand and felt something in his chest loosen in the wrong direction, like a bolt backing out. "You're right," he said. "We will rewrite recovery protocol for occupied vehicles and employee lots first. Then the whole book." Pastor Ellis cleared his throat from 2 tables away without looking up. "And no NDAs for silence. Silence is how lots stay clean." Victor met his eyes. "No NDA." Carmen tore a sugar packet she did not use. "Last thing. If this is about your conscience having a good weekend, keep your money. My kids don't need a hero. They need a schedule and a car that stays on the ground." "I understand," Victor said. "No," Carmen said, "not cruel, precise. You saw. Understanding takes longer. Come back in 6 months and we'll measure." The night before the board meeting, Victor drove alone to Western Avenue, to the empty lot where Raymond's trailer once sat. A self-storage place occupied the ground now, its orange door units locked like teeth. He parked and sat with the engine off until the cold forced honesty. He remembered Raymond counting cash under a bare bulb, saying the country ran on people wanting to be seen arriving. Arrival required chrome. Chrome required paper. Paper required punishment. The chain had felt to a boy like physics. "Physics can be redesigned," Victor said aloud to a street that did not care. A self-storage customer rolled up and eyed Victor's coat as if calculating whether the man looked lost or dangerous. Victor nodded once, the nod of someone who belonged nowhere for a moment on purpose. Belonging, he thought, had been his lifelong trick. Belonged to the contract class, never to the lot class. He called Cole his son and did not talk about liquidity. He said, "I almost let a company I built lift a worker's car with her kids watching." Cole was quiet, then said, "So fix the code, not the press." It was the most useful sentence his son had given him since learning to speak in market metaphors. After the call, Victor opened his notes app and wrote a sentence he would read to the board if his courage thinned. If our excellence award cannot survive a detailer's ER bill, it was never excellence. It was cosmetics. The board meeting was held in a conference room with a glass wall facing a row of new Porsches that gleamed like obedient futures. Coffee steamed untouched. Someone had set out pastries shaped like kindness and priced like indifference. Board member Helen Cho called the proposal sentimental contagion. The captive finance lead warned that softening recovery metrics would spook warehouse lenders. Dane argued for a quiet one-off settlement with Carmen and a non-disclosure agreement. Buy her silence, refinance her note, and keep the book intact, Dane said. "We do not set precedent because a rabbit was present." Victor looked at him until Dane's eyes dropped to his laptop. Victor clicked to a slide with no chrome on it. Average cost to replace a trained luxury detailer at Flagship, $4,800 in recruiting and quality ramp. Average net recovery on a repo like Carmen's after fees, transport, auction haircut. Often less than the relationship value of a 3-year employee with 14 compliment cards. We are lighting loyal labor on fire to protect a fee schedule. He clicked again. In the last 18 months, Hale Financial repossessed or initiated recovery a guy. NST-41 accounts belonging to active Hale Motors employees across the group. In 29 of those cases, the employee had overtime reductions or schedule cuts in the prior 60 days under our efficiency program. Silence. The particular silence of people who liked data until data accused them. Helen tried a different angle. Victor, our lenders will ask if Hale Financial still has spine. They can ask, Victor said. I'll tell them spine that only flexes against poor employees is not spine. It's posture. I'm suspending employee account recoveries group-wide pending human review, he continued. I'm cutting captive APRs for employee loans to a capped employee rate of 6.9% going forward and refinancing active employee books to that rate. Late fees on medically documented hardship get waived with proof. Recovery teams are banned from employee lots without CO+1 written approval and a welfare check for children or pets in vehicle. My personal capital seeds a worker mobility fund $9 million for bridge payments and emergency transport when our schedules and our loans collide. Helen Cho exhaled. You're rewriting the religion. I'm fixing the chassis, Victor said. A company that repos its own workers' cars in the snow doesn't have a culture problem. It has a design problem. Helen asked for a pilot instead of a group-wide change. Victor refused. Pilots are how we practice courage in a closet, he said. Carmen's kids were not a pilot. The truck was not a pilot. The policy won't be either. The captive finance lead asked who would sign the lender letters. Victor said, I will. With my name. Not a committee euphemism. When the vote came, it was not warm. It was sufficient. Sufficient, Victor decided, was the temperature at which real ethics often arrived, not glowing, not viral, just binding. Dane resigned 4 days later with a letter about philosophical divergence. Victor accepted without a farewell roast. Philosophical divergence, he wrote in a note to himself, was what people. He called it when the mirror stopped flattering them. That weekend Victor personally called 3 employees whose recoveries had completed before the freeze. 2 hung up. 1, a shuttle driver named Patricia, listened and said, You can send a check. You can't send me the Tuesday I missed my daughter's recital because I was on a bus. Don't ask me to make you feel finished. Victor sent the check anyway, with a letter that did not ask for forgiveness. Some debts, he wrote in the notebook, remain open on purpose. The weeks after were not cinematic. They were phone trees, software tickets, angry emails from collection vendors, and a union steward at the service side who said, About time, without smiling. IT had to force Hale Financial Servicing Platform to read the HR active employee feed, a marriage of databases that should have existed years earlier and had been avoided because ignorance was profitable. For 18 days, the interface failed twice nightly. Ruthie Almanzar, newly named employee account advocate, slept with her laptop like a firefighter. Victor rode with a recovery operator named Curtis for 1 night in Cicero, not as punishment tourism, as education. Curtis was 50, careful, and tired of being hated for other men's policies. They took a sedan from a dark driveway while a neighbor filmed. No children inside. Still, Victor felt the violence of orderly procedure, clipboard, camera, hook, gone. On the ride back, Curtis said, Most people aren't monsters. Most people are late because math broke. Your old rules treated broken math like a character flaw. Victor went home and sat in his heated garage with the engine off until his hands warmed enough to hold a pen. He gave Ruthie Freeze authority and told her the same thing he should have told someone years earlier. If they route around you, call me at 5:01 a.m. Ruthie called him at 5:01 a.m. on her 3rd day. A regional collections manager had tried to redefine employee lot as non-customer asphalt to dodge the ban. Victor fired the manager by noon and sent a group-wide note with one subject line: Do not get clever with asphalt. In March, he visited 3 other Hale rooftops: Milwaukee, Indianapolis, Grand Rapids, and held breakroom meetings without cameras. Technicians told him about buses that never came. A receptionist described nursing a repo warning through Christmas because her child's ear infection overlapped a dealer spiff contest that required unpaid overtime energy she did not have. Victor took notes until his hand cramped. Note-taking, he decided, was a form of repentance that still required deeds. Before the refinance papers finished their slow dance through compliance, Victor asked Carmen if he could see the route her life actually took. Not as a tour, as an audit with sidewalks. She almost refused. Then she said, You can ride once. No driver in a suit behind us. No photo. You sit in the back like a spare tire, and you do not speak to my kids like a commercial. On a Thursday morning, he met her at the Mount Prospect apartment building where the carpet in the hallway smelled of old soup and dryer sheets. The Corolla started on the third try. Diego buckled himself with the seriousness of a co-pilot. Luna narrated Ben's opinions about traffic lights. Carmen drove with the controlled aggression of a person who had timed lights against school tardy bells for years. School drop-off. Clinic pharmacy for a spacer refill reminder she did not need but checked anyway. Grocery for milk. Then the dealership. 41 minutes door to door if the lights loved you. 70 if they did not. Victor watched the clock on the dash and did the math his company never put in a board packet. If the car vanished, the job vanished. If the job vanished, the apartment followed. If the apartment followed, the school stability followed. A repo was not the loss of metal. It was a controlled demolition of a week. At a red light, Carmen said, without turning, "Your Super Bowl ad shows a family hugging in a driveway. My driveway is a shared lot with a guy who steals paw. Cages. Sell truth or sell fantasy. But don't finance fantasy with my children's car seats as collateral." Victor said nothing. For once, silence was not distance. It was respect. Compliance delayed the APR reset 9 days with questions about selective modification optics. Victor answered each email with the same sentence. Selective modification is what we used to call recovery. This is correction. On day 10, Carmen signed at a desk in F&I that had once sold her the 19.9% note with balloons in the background. The F&I manager, sweating, tried to apologize sideways. Carmen said, "Don't apologize. Change the menu for the next woman." That afternoon, Ruthie posted a one-page plain language flyer in every Hale break room. If you work here and finance here, you can request hardship review. Medical docs count. Schedule cuts count. Employee lots are not hunting grounds. Call Ruthie first. Portal second. Someone drew a heart on one flyer. Someone else wrote, "Finally." Victor took a picture of neither. There was pushback in the form of a lunch. 3 dealer principals from the group asked for a private meal at a steakhouse where the lighting made everyone look solvent. They told Victor he was setting a soft precedent in a hard business. One said, half joking, "Next the porters will want prime rates." Victor set down his fork. If the people who prep the cars cannot afford the car's cousins in the employee lot, the business is already soft. It just hides the soft rot under chrome. He left before dessert. On the sidewalk he called Paige and told her about the rabbit. Paige cried once, angrily, and said, "I hate that it took a toy in the snow." Victor said, "Me too." That was the most honest father-daughter call they had managed in years. Not every story inside the reform closed clean. A porter in Grand Rapids had already lost his truck the month before Carmen's almost repo. By the time Ruthie's freeze existed, he was commuting 2 hours by bus and looking for work closer to home. Victor offered Bridge H. Help and a refinance on a replacement. The porter said, "Keep it. I don't want your company in my glove box again." Victor wrote the refusal down as a success metric his board would never understand. The right to decline a repaired trap. A sales associate tried to exploit the new hardship path with fake clinic paperwork. Ruthie caught it, banned him from the fund, and sent Victor a note. Good systems still need skeptics. Victor promoted her budget, not her title. Titles were chrome. Budgets were engines. Ruthie's first rail save was a body shop estimator named Deshawn in Milwaukee, whose van payment tripped recovery after a week of unpaid leave for his father's funeral. Under the old rules, grief was not a portal category. Under the new ones, Ruthie froze the account, waived 2 late fees, and scheduled a 3-week bridge from the mobility fund against his return-to-work date. Deshawn cried on the phone for 12 seconds, then said, "Tell your boss I still don't trust rich men, but I trust a freeze code." Ruthie put that in the Friday table under qualitative notes, knowing Victor would read it twice. Her second save was Messier. Twins of a receptionist in Indianapolis. Daycare closed for mold, 3 absences, schedule cut, loan day 8 late. The receptionist expected punishment. Instead, Ruthie asked for daycare emails and punch records, then conference called the store GM and said, "If you cut her hours again this month without coordinating with me, I escalate." The GM sputtered about authority. Ruthie said, My authority is the hook not coming to your lot. Choose. Victor began to understand that reform was not a speech. It was 1,000 small refusals to be clever with asphalt. Carmen's sister, Maribel, finally made it over on a Sunday with airport coffee and the wary face of family who had watched Carmen survive too many almosts. They sat on the couch while the kids built a fort from clean laundry. So the owner is Jesus now? Maribel asked. No, Carmen said. He's a man who saw the truck. There's a difference between conversion and being caught. You taking money? I'm taking a fair rate and my hours. If he wants a statue, he can carve it himself. Maribel laughed, then sobered. If the truck comes back, you call me before you call him. I will, Carmen said. And because she was practical before she was proud, she taped Ruthie's break room flyer inside her locker door, level with her eyes. On a wet Tuesday, Victor forced himself to sit through 2 hours of customer delivery theater. Big bows, phone videos, the ceremonial handoff of keys like knighthood. Between deliveries, he walked to payroll and asked for a distribution of wages among detailers versus F&I commissions on a strong month. The spreadsheet was obscene in the quiet way spreadsheets often are. He carried it to the next principal's call and made them look at it in silence for a full minute before speaking. This is the distance, he said. We market family. We pay extraction. Close the distance or stop lying in the ads. No one clapped. Progress rarely clapped. He also changed one small ritual that mattered more than a slogan. Every Monday at 7:45 a.m., before the sales floor unlocked its grin, Victor walked the detailing bay and service lane with coffee he poured himself. He learned names. Not all at once, that would have been a stunt, but steadily, the way debt compounds. He learned that Anita in Portering sang alto in church. That Omar in Lube had a mother in Skokie with dementia. That Carmen's favorite polished sponge had to be a certain density or she swore the clear coat could tell. Microknowledge. The opposite of portal distance. One Monday, Dane's former deputy tried to reinstate a soft recovery window language into vendor contracts. Ruthie CC'd Victor at 5:03 a.m. with the clause highlighted. Victor replied to all deleted. Any vendor who needs child-adjacent fear to hit SLA can lose the contract. The vendor called him personally to call him emotional. Victor said, correct. Emotionally attached to not towing my workers. Adapt. In late spring, the flagship hosted a charity concours on the showroom lawn. Polished cars, white tents, donors writing checks for youth STEM. Victor walked the event with a knot in his throat. He believed in STEM. He also believed now that youth opportunity looked a lot like Diego having a car seat that stayed put through winter. Mid-event, he pulled the marketing director aside and killed a planned testimonial video about Hale's heart for workers. Publish the APR table and the recovery drop, Victor said. If we need violin music to prove we stopped hunting employees, we didn't stop. We rebranded. The marketing director looked pained. Donors like faces. Donors can like accountability, Victor said. Faces are how we turn Carmen into content. She already vetoed that. So did I. Carmen, for her part, refused to become the office parable. When a new hire whispered, "You're the one the owner saved," she corrected him without raising her voice. "I'm the one who made him see the truck," she said. "I save myself every morning I get these kids to school. Don't rewrite that." The new hire blushed and nodded. Stories tried to simplify her into a prop. She kept complicating them back into labor. Carmen refinanced at 6.9. The late fees vanished. Overtime returned in a narrower, stabler form. A shift differential for nights instead of chaotic extras that could be erased by memo. She still detailed Bentleys. She still packed imperfect lunches. Diego still wheezed when the weather turned, but the inhaler was in the apartment drawer, not in a repoed glove box. The first Friday after the refinance, she sat at her kitchen table with Diego and made him do a new kind of math homework. If the payment is $214 at 19.9 and becomes $171 at 6.9, what did the company used to take from us for the privilege of getting to work? Diego frowned. $43. Every month, Carmen said. For a bridge they also owned. Luna, coloring bin the rabbit with purple scribbles, said, "Is Mr. Hale a good guy now?" Carmen thought of Pastor Ellis of the diner of 6 months as a measuring stick. "He's a man who got caught by his own parking lot," she said. We'll see if he stays caught. On a Saturday in March, Victor walked to space 19B and found the Corolla parked straight, child seat visible in back, a small rabbit ear stuck in the windowsill. Carmen appeared with a microfiber cloth in her hand. "You're in my lot," she said. "I own the lot," Victor said. "You own the loan too," she answered. "Try owning the consequences all the way this time." He almost smiled. "Working on it." Diego ran up, backpack bouncing. "Mom said if the truck comes back I can throw a snowball at it." "If the truck comes back," Victor said. "Throw the snowball at me." Carmen did not laugh. She nodded once, the nod of a woman filing a promise under probation. Before he left, she handed him a folded compliment card a client had left on a windshield the week of the almost repo. In neat pen, Carr looked unreal. "Whoever did this should be paid like it matters." "I kept these in my locker," Carmen said. "Your company paid me like they were fluff. Don't put that card in a frame and call yourself healed. Put it in the wage review." Victor put the card in his inside pocket, over his heart, and hated how symbolic it looked. Symbolism was easy. Wage reviews were minutes and fights. Through spring, the Worker Mobility Fund paid for bus passes, 2 temporary rentals when engines failed, a week of rideshare credit after a technician's car was hit in a customer lot, and 11 bridge payments that Ruthie approved only after she verified medical documents and schedule cuts. She rejected for requests that smelled like managers trying to convert disciplinary problems into charity. She emailed Victor each Friday a dry table. Approved, denied, reason codes, days saved from recovery. No photos of children. No soundtrack. Paige visited from Ann Arbor in May and rode shotgun while Victor did an unannounced walk through Flagship Service Lane. She watched Carmen polish a fender and said, quietly, "Dad, this is the first time your job looked like it had a bottom half." "It always did," Victor said. "I lived on the top half and called the distance leadership." In April, a warehouse lender flew in from Chicago Loop offices to ask whether Hale Financial had lost its collections culture. Victor met him in the service drive, not the boardroom, and pointed at space 19B while a detailer rolled a polisher over a black SUV. "That space is culture," Victor said. "For years our culture was, if the math breaks for the person shining the inventory, we take the bridge they need to arrive and call it discipline. We're changing the definition of discipline to include not cannibalizing our own labor." The lender frowned. "And yields? Employee book delinquencies are down. Retention is up. If your model needs my workers terrified to function, find another originator." It was a bluff with teeth. The lender stayed. Fear of missing volume, Victor learned, could be useful when pointed in the correct direction. That same month Diego had a school career day. He announced he wanted to be the person who stops tow trucks. The class laughed. The teacher did not. Carmen put the drawing on the fridge. A small boy with a stop sign standing in front of a hooked car. Victor, invited awkwardly to speak for 5 minutes as a local business owner, stood in front of third graders and said, "The best business people fix the machines that hurt people they depend on." He did not say billionaire. He did not say almost. He said fix. Then he sat down and let a firefighter be more interesting, which felt like appropriate hierarchy. On the first warm evening in May, Carmen let the kids play on the dealership's far grass strip after close while she finished a rush job. Victor brought 2 paper cups of lemonade from the lounge like a man attempting a language he had not studied. Luna tasted it and said it was fancy sour. Diego asked if the cameras would yell at them for being on the grass. "Not Tanig. HT," Victor said. Carmen watched him the way she watched Clearcoat for defects. "You're still on probation." "I know." "Good," she said. "Probation means you're still dangerous if unsupervised." They stood without filling the air. In the distance a car alarm misbehaved and then thought better of it. Diego practiced cartwheels that failed into laughter. Luna placed Bin in the grass like a security guard. Victor realized this was the first time his lot had held joy that was not for sale. He did not brand it. He did not Instagram it. He let it exist at the edge of inventory like a correction the asphalt had earned. "Same time next February," Carmen said eventually. "If the truck stays gone through winter, maybe we upgrade you from probation to provisional human." "I'll take provisional," Victor said. "Don't take it," Carmen corrected. Earn it. Weekly. 6 months later, the local news did not lead with a billionaire's redemption reel. A short business segment noted that Hale Financial's employee account delinquencies had dropped after APR resets and hardship review, while detailer retention at Hale flagship rose 22%. Recovery actions against active employees fell to zero in Q2. A consumer advocate said, cautiously, that captive lenders rarely rewrite their own clause without a public wound. Curtis, the recovery operator, appeared for 7 seconds and shrugged. Rules got slower. Slower is how you avoid becoming the villain in a kid's memory. Carmen, interviewed in the detailing bay with the sound of polishers behind her, said, "He didn't save me. He stopped his company from hunting me for sport while I made his inventory pretty. There's a difference. I still wipe fingerprints off cars I'll never own. My kids still need a ride to school. The only new thing is the ride still exists in the morning." Victor watched from his office glass, water tumbler untouched. In the lot below, Space 19 beheld a gray Corolla that looked, from the second floor, like what it had always been and what he had failed to see. Not a receivable. A life support system with seat belts. He thought of Raymond's trailer on Western Avenue, of tears as leverage, of contracts that stayed when buyers left. He thought of how long he had mistaken permanence for virtue. A contract could stay and still be wrong. A recovery order could execute perfectly and still be a moral failure with excellent timestamps. That evening, he declined a golf invitation from a peer who wanted to talk about the soft finance rumor, and instead sat on the break room chair that squeaked. He stayed until the night crew clocked out. The microwave still blinked 12 o'clock. He finally reset it. Tiny repair. He allowed himself to see it as practice. When Carmen passed with her bag and her kids, Diego saluted him with 2 fingers, ironic and fond. Luna held up Ben. "He likes you a little now," Luna said. "Tell Ben I'm still on probation," Victor answered. Carmen almost smiled. Almost was enough. Outside, heat rose off the asphalt where snow had once framed a hook. Summer made the lot look harmless. Victor knew better. Harmless was a seasonal costume. The real test would be next February, when the cold returned and some other ledger tried to call fear by the name of policy. He intended to still be standing at the glass not as a watcher of systems, but as a breaker of the ones that hunted his own. On the last page of Raymond Hale's old close-rate notebook, under Never Fall in Love with the Buyer, Victor wrote, "Fall in love with the people who make the sale possible. A contract that eats your workers is not a good contract. If your recovery truck knows your employee lot better than your hardship line knows a human voice, you are not in transportation. You are in extraction. Then smaller. Tears are not always leverage. Sometimes they are the check engine light. Ignore enough lights and the whole machine stops on the side of the road, with children in the back seat, watching who comes to help." Epilogue. A note from the author. Victor Hale and Carmen Ruiz are fictional. The dealership, the captive lender, and the conversations were imagined. The pressure underneath them is not. Across the United States, millions of workers rely on finance cars to reach jobs that barely cover the financing. Captive lending can expand access or turn an employer's parking lot into a collections theater. Medical bills, unstable hours, and high APRs collide every day in ways that never appear in a Super Bowl commercial about dreams. A car is not a luxury when the shift starts before the buses run. It is infrastructure. When infrastructure is financed by the same hand that schedules your labor, missing a payment can mean losing the tool required to earn the next one. That is not a morality play about responsibility. That is a feedback loop with a winch. When the same corporate family cuts your hours and services your auto loan, lateness is not only personal weather. Can be engineered climate. Repossession then becomes not a neutral consequence but the last gear in a machine that was always designed to extract. Children learn this climate early. They learn it when adults go quiet beside a truck. They learn it when a favorite stuffed animal becomes a witness. If the story does anything, let it make that quiet harder to ignore. None of this means every late payment is a villainous lender's fault. Responsibility is real. Budgets are real. But responsibility cannot be honest in a system that sells the commute, schedules the paycheck, and owns the recovery truck then pretends those are 3 unrelated weather systems. If you are facing repossession or transportation crisis tied to work, call 211 for local assistance. and seek non-profit credit counseling or legal aid before you ignore a notice. If your employer and your lender are related entities, document everything: schedules, calls, medical bills, portal screenshots. Ask in writing for hardship review, record dates, keep names, tell a trusted witness. Doors open easier when you are not alone in the lot. Thank you for staying on till the end. If this stayed with you, subscribe, comment where you're watching from, and share it with someone who needs the reminder. A job should not finance the trap that keeps you from getting to the job. And a billionaire's lot is still public moral ground when a child's rabbit is watching the hook. Judge the company by the tow truck, not the champagne at delivery. If the hook knows your workers better than your hardship line does, you are not selling freedom. You are leasing it back to them at 19.9%. Until the snow falls, and the lot tells the truth. If you manage people who must drive to survive your schedule, ask one question before the next memo about efficiency. When we cut their hours, do we also still own their note? If the answer is yes, you are not running two businesses. You are running a pincer. Open the pincer, or admit what you are. And if you take one image from this story, take the crayon drawing in the rear window. A blue car, a stick family, a smile, rising on a winch beneath a logo that promised dreams. Then decide which side of the glass you live on, and what you will do the next time the truck backs up. Will you watch systems work, or will you walk down the stairs, coat forgotten, shoes slipping, voice unsteady, and say the only sentence that matters while a child's backpack waits in the snow? Unhook it, then rebuild the company so you never have to say it twice. Because the next Corolla is already in someone's employee lot. The next ER bill is already printing. The next portal is already saying no. And the next child is already asking without knowing your net worth. Are you going to help my mom? Your answer is not a feeling. Your answer is a policy, a freeze code, a wage, a rate. And whether the hook still knows your asphalt better than your conscience does. Choose the stairs. Choose the unhook. Choose the boring table Ruthie sends every Friday. Choose a company that can shine a Bentley without hunting the woman who made it shine. That is the whole story. Not champagne. Not a Super Bowl dream. A car that stays on the ground. And a mother who can still get to work when the snow decides to stay. Thank you for reading all the way to the lot. Now look at your own asphalt. Who parks there? And who owns the note? If both answers point to you, winter is already watching. And so is the child waiting in the back seat right now.